Hi, and welcome to Vibin with, brought to you by Puzzles of Color.
On this episode of Vibin with, we're talking with Tabitha Whitley. Tabitha Whitley is a Brooklyn-based artist with a focus in oil painting and relief printmaking. Tabitha received her BFA in painting from the National Institute of Technology in 2009. Then went on to receive her MFA in painting from the New York Academy of Arts in 2011. She is the current president of the Alumni Association of the New York Academy of Arts and is a serving member of the Board of Trustees. Tabitha has had her work shown in galleries throughout the United States and has been featured in the Wall Street Journal.
Alrighty, welcome to Vibin with, and today we are vibing with Tabitha, the artist behind Visitant. Well, welcome. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
Great to see you. So we have gotten to speak a few times as we're on this journey, but would you like to tell the audience a little bit about yourself? Give us a little.
Sure. My name is Tabitha Whitley. I am a native New Yorker, born and raised in Brooklyn. I've been making art my whole life. I've been lucky that my family's always supported my creative endeavors. So I was always that kid who just, doodled in school and never stopped. And they just let me take all the art classes I want. And I ended up going to art school in the city too. I've traveled a little bit, but I've always lived here. And now, at the post grad, I am an art teacher and an art creator, and I use social media as well as just normal in-person networking to share my work, sell my work, and just share the creativity with anyone who's interested.
Amazing. One thing, when you were just talking about the fact that you've been doing art since you were little, I'm like, that's just awesome to me, because my daughter is very into drawing now. I just got back at my dad's house, and I was like, here, look, you have your notepad and your pen, and so I'm like, oh, she might be an amazing artist like you one day.
That is the sign. If you have a kid who can just be content with just something to draw on, that's it. That's all you need. Yeah. My mom used to take me with her to church when I was little, and I was bored in there, but she always knew to bring envelopes and pens, not even a sketchbook, but just mailed envelopes, and I would have that thing filled up by the end of it. So yeah, that's definitely a wink to the creative gene.
Awesome.
Yeah. That's what my parents did for me as well, a lot when I was drawing. At church for sure, because I always get trouble if I wasn't.
Yeah. So you're a teacher. What age? What level do you teach at?
All over. My ideal age group is actually college level. That's what I'm accredited to teach, because I have a master's of fine arts as opposed to a master's of education, which would be more lower level. But I do teach younger children. I taught at the Brooklyn Museum, I taught 8 to 13-year-olds for a few of their summer, winter sessions that they do. And I work also at a paint bar part-time. So you'll get people from 5 years old to any age that can walk in. But it's really fun to teach different levels, because you find with children, they're way more free and confident in themselves. And a lot of their confidence comes from just reassuring them that they can make whatever choice they want. And all ideas are good ideas. You could just see them glow with pride when they have their own creative idea and you support it. And with adults, it's kind of life wears on them. And they're like, I can't do this. I'm not an artist. I have an identity now, and it's not this. And they freak out about everything they do. And, especially if they have no experience, but then if they do have experience and they're trying to challenge themselves, then you could crack the whip a little harder. So it's, you have different hands for how you handle, each group, which is really interesting. Just kind of learning to not be one kind of teacher, but learning how to teach for your student, whichever student you might have at that moment, So you have to be very adaptable.
What school did you go to get your master's?
Oh, yeah, sure. I should do the whole run through. I'll just give everybody their shout out. So I actually started at Brooklyn High School of the Arts, New York has specialized high school. So it started there. And then for undergrad, I went to the Fashion Institute of Technology. They're known for being a fashion school in New York, but they do, fine art, illustration, animation, all that. And then I got my master's from the New York Academy of Art. And so those are my three big, the length of my real formal art education. But so yeah, FIT was for the bachelor's. Yeah.
Nice. Yeah, actually, I stayed in a hotel right next to FIT, so it was really cool. last time I was in New York, and I actually went and did like a little tour, and like, was it maybe the museum?
Yeah, they have like a museum that's like right attached to the school, right across their like blocked off street. That's kind of like the whole university block they have there.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a fun area because it's in the historic garment district in New York, which is no longer really much of a garment district. But back in the day, that was where all the fabric stores were and all the seamstresses, and just the whole industry was like between like 20 something and 34th, you know. And so FIT was smack dab right in that fabric industry, which has definitely evolved over time. But, you know, you could still see the hints of like the industry still there. Still a lot of fabric stores if you go through the little side streets around there. Yeah.
Awesome. That is so cool. And then you're also a president of your Alumni Association for the master's degree. So tell us about what you get to do with that.
Well, I mean, after I graduated, it's funny what got me into volunteering. I did a little bit of volunteering here and there in school. Like if there's like an art show and they're like, hey, we need people to pour wine or help with sales. It's like, sure, I've got a couple hours to do that. But after I graduated, I was interested in teaching art abroad. And, you know, I applied for one of these programs that didn't accept me, but I saw they had all these different brackets for like, what volunteer work have you done? And I'm like, whoa, like barely anything to fill this in. So I'm like, all right, maybe I could go out and get some experience, especially working with kids. I'm like, you know, I guess if my time isn't worth anything, let me give it away for free until it has some value. And I first started volunteering with New York Cares, and that got me like painting murals in kids' schools, which is not what I came in expecting to do, but that kind of opened some doors for paid work in that arena. And then that kind of just opened my eyes to like, oh, you know, if you want experience but don't have it, volunteer and, you know, just get involved. And especially being an artist, you know, like your art community is everything. It's not what you do, it's who you know in every industry. So I, you know, wanted to be more involved in my alumni community because I really, you know, enjoyed my time at my grad school. And I always felt like I'm always meeting people who I connect with who graduate from there. They're kind of just like my perfect weird tribe of humans, you know, just like, all right, they're producing a lot of people who get me. So I should keep hanging around in this space. And so I originally just volunteered to help the former Alumni Association cabinet. You know, they had a big show and I just helped them do a few things. And someone said, maybe I should run. And at first I thought it was too many emails. I didn't think I could be someone who was good at bureaucracy and just staying on top of stuff. You know, I definitely have an artist's brain. I could space out, but I won. And I took to it. It's been really great. It's given me a lot of nonprofit experience. And, you know, I'm meeting so many different people. And, you know, I'm really connecting more with the different artists from different graduation years. And the kind of stuff we do is we help like put on art shows or just help bring awareness to what's going on with different community members. Like if someone has an art show, it's like, all right, we'll post that on the Instagram, or someone has an idea for an event and we know someone who can connect them and just like help them reach their goals. So that's like a lot of the things we do. And I'm in my second term right now. It's 2 years. And this is like the beginning of my first year of my second term. And I actually am also a trustee on the board of the New York Academy of Art. That kind of came in time after me doing my work with them. I think they were, you know, impressed enough that they wanted more of my feedback at a higher level. So now I'm, you know, serving as the Alumni Association representative on the board of trustees, which again, you know, is increasing my nonprofit experience and introducing me to even more, you know, successful and, you know, inspiring individuals who I'm really glad to be getting to know. And, you know, that's just something that I always tell everybody now. Like, I feel like I've learned a lot later in life that volunteering opens doors. I feel like, you know, kids who maybe grow up in wealthier households, they know that they should be volunteering when they're in junior high, but like, I did not know that. So, you know, if anybody's listening, if you want to branch out and do something different, you have no experience, just volunteer first. You might think you have no time to volunteer, but you actually do. Like, everybody has time to volunteer. Surprisingly, you could find just a little bit, and it's selfless and selfish every time, you know, like just volunteer to do something that can help you. Why not help yourself while you're helping someone else? you weren't going to be helping someone else anyway. So, everybody wins. So that has been a very rewarding experience for me. And I'm glad I did it. It's also very busy, but, I'm glad I did it. Yeah.
Yeah, it sounds like a lot, but I used to volunteer a lot younger. Like my parents would have us volunteer for universities, not universities, elementary schools and stuff. We go
Nice.
summer schools.
Yeah.
And I definitely I think it's a really worth doing because I help people out any way you can. So I guess with all this art stuff that you do, are you working art full time? Is that like your full career now?
I mean, I suppose, it's all a hustle.
Yeah.
There are definitely some times where it's like, ooh, I hope somebody buys a painting soon because it's getting a little rough. But all of my work is now art related, which I feel very fortunate to be able to say. I'm either making art or teaching art or volunteering within the art world. So yeah, I'm very lucky that it's like, I used to wait tables, which I did not enjoy. It gave me a lot. Every job gave me something. And I'm really happy to be past that point in my life, knock on wood. Like, I know life's not a straight line. You can do this. So I'm, grateful to not be waiting tables anymore and to have only art related work at this point in my life.
So you mentioned that like one of the things you volunteer is doing, like you've done murals at schools. Like what is your favorite kind of medium, I guess, as far as art? I'm sure you learned lots of different types with all the different threes.
Right. I think definitely my heart is in oil paintings. Like that is, that's what my puzzle is. Oil paint, it's classical, but it's timeless. There's just something about this specific paint that it has like a lot of magic within it. Like you can make it look so different in so many different ways. So it's kind of like a love affair with that medium for me, for sure. I also do printmaking, which is, if people aren't familiar with it, it's like the process of almost like making your own like giant stamps. You take a flat piece of linoleum or wood and you carve an image into it, roll some ink on it, press paper on, and then boop, you've got a copy image. And so that's one of my other main mediums that I really enjoy. But I mean, I also draw like pencil, pen, charcoal, but I probably don't often sit down and say, I'm going to do a gigantic drawing today. Like that's not usually like my main medium, but if somebody challenged me to, or if I felt so inclined, I could. But yeah, it's usually painting and printmaking, but I've dabbled in a lot. If you go to art school, they make you try a little bit of everything.
So what did you like about like
printmaking?
Yes, printmaking.
Yeah. I love that I can get multiples of one image and I can do different things to it. So like if I do like a painting, like it takes me a couple of months. You can do things called giclée prints, which are basically high level Xeroxes, but not with printer ink, but with a pigment on acid-free paper that makes them archival. And if you print them in limited editions, like you're like, all right, I'm going to print this painting, but they're only going to be 200 of them. Nobody gets any more after that. That gives them value. I could do that. But for the most part, a painting is one, a painting gets sold, a painting is gone. But with prints, what you do is like, this is a piece of linoleum. It's hard to tell, but I carved into this.
I see. Yeah.
And so with this, I mean, this is pretty hard, so it's not going to degrade too much. So I can get a bunch of prints out of this, and I could do different prints with different colored inks. So this is what print looks like when it's printed. And, it's like a mirror image, you peel it off like that. And so I could print this in, red, blue, gold. I could add other elements. I could draw into it. I could add gold leaf after. I love that it's really versatile and that I could, get multiples of the same image, or I can make them different and still make them one of a kind. And it's also really fun, just the process of actually making the linoleum, because I mean, it might seem difficult, but you're carving basically rather than drawing, but it's fun. Once you get a rhythm for it and you really get going with your process, it can be cool to just sit down and methodically just go through, but I mean, you have to have like the patience for it, or like be into that kind of meticulous work. There's meticulous art that I can't get into either, where I'm like, you guys are nuts. I can't sit there and do that all day. But I really enjoy it for those reasons. And it's great for trading art, for giving Christmas gifts to family members, because I can't give a family member a painting I spent 5 months on. Like, that's not happening. So, there's a lot of benefits to printmaking, with that regard, like there's a lot more art for everyone as well.
So you said 5 months on a painting. That's amazing. Like, how do you find your inspiration? Like, what is your process?
My process, it evolves. It evolves all the time. And, I still feel like, my style is ever changing. But one of the main themes that runs through my work is like, it's an exploration of my, African-American ancestry. I think a lot of African-Americans, in America can share a similar feeling of, like having like a disconnect from your heritage that goes beyond what happens here in America. It's like, well, where in Africa are my ancestors from? Like, what countries, what tribes, what are these cultures? And I did an ancestry DNA test a few years back, and that gave me those answers. All of a sudden, I know, like, I'm mostly Nigerian, and like my ancestors, like, are either from there or the Congo and Cameroon. And now I go into art museums and I'm like, oh, wow, most of the art that are in this, or that's, in these museums are coming from the Congo. And it was the Kuba Kingdom back then. And like, now I know I have ancestors who have been making art for thousands of years, and there's a lot more beauty to my past, and it's hard to reconcile those feelings. It's not just saying, okay, now I'm going to put a bunch of Congolese symbolism in my art and that's it. It's kind of like less about like, this is who I am now and I'm painting about being African. It's more about making paintings about me processing how I even feel about having this information, if that makes sense, because I think that is even more of a process than even just nailing down a new self-identity and trying to reconcile it. And I think that's a big thing with art. Like, I once heard someone say, when you're making art, you're not trying to solve anything. You're not trying to find big answers to big questions, but really it's an exploration. You're exploring a subject. You're trying to go on a journey that doesn't necessarily have to have an end. So a lot of times, you'll see a lot of plants and flowers in my pieces. And a lot of that is really just symbolic of me connecting with my roots, my nature, my past, who I really am. And I mean, I think, if you go really deep into it, like, depending on how into science you are, it's like, if you trace far back enough in your DNA, past the Congolese ancestors, past even the fish that came out of the water, you could find that we've got some common ancestry with trees. We process glucose in the same way. So it's kind of like just getting these really deep connections and surface connections. And so a lot of the imagery can be pretty metaphorical, but it's really me kind of processing how I feel about all of these different things, which can be a lot. Which is why the work changes, the work swirls around, and so it's a journey, but it's good to have a journey that doesn't have an end, because you always have something to explore. So, I mean, it's a pretty loaded answer, I'm sure, but
fantastic answer. Very clear.
No.
Very
when the journey ends, then it's over. So, you don't ever want it to end. So
exactly.
I love that.
Well, I know you mentioned I told you I actually am working on your puzzle right now.
Which is so crazy.
And it is beautiful. And I was saying, like, man, it's so much harder than I thought it would be, just because, like, I'm like, there's a lot of blue, and I'm having to figure out where the blues are. And you mentioned you use 3 different colors, and you try to like make an image out of using just those 3 colors. Tell us more about that process.
Yeah. So that is actually kind of just like a classical thing to do. Back in the old days, artists didn't have that many colors to work with, because our paint comes from pigment, which is just crushed up stuff that is that color in nature. And so that's why a lot of old timey paintings, there's just like a lot of browns, and it's like very neutral, but so they were using limited palettes with just a couple of colors to achieve an entire painting. And it's like, really fascinating process. And it's really overwhelming to try to figure out, what to do with all these different colors you have. If you've got, like, now in the 21st century, we've got a million synthetic colors to play with, and you can get a little overwhelmed. So I found it really helpful to work with limited palettes. I essentially just take a red, a blue, and a yellow and mix the rest of the rainbow from it and make a painting using mostly that.
Right.
Like the painting that is the puzzle. It's mostly 3 colors, but then like pops of like a brighter yellow here and there. But so it's funny because, I don't do that many puzzles or think about puzzle strategy. So when you guys were telling me about that, like how it's like, yeah, I thought this brown was skin, but it was dirt. And I thought this color was here, but it was there. And I'm like, oh, right. Because I use the same color in all these different places, but I'm trying to make it cohesive. It's kind of like a black and white film, like you don't know where that gray goes. So it's just funny to hear how my painting translates and makes the puzzle challenging.
It's a challenge, but it's fun. And and the harder it is, the harder a puzzle is, and the more rewarding and exciting it is when it's completed, especially, when we have these puzzles that are supposed to be framed. So like,
so cool.
It's taken me a minute because I have a very, very active 2-year-old who likes to look at, she's looking, but I'm like, okay, if you touch that piece, I'm going to be nervous. So I have to be very, very careful. It's taking me a minute, but when I finish it, you'll definitely get a picture.
I mean, I'm honored. And I didn't even think about that, like framing finished puzzles. I may have seen that in a household or two, but I don't see it that often. So it's like, oh, wow. Yeah. Like you guys are keeping them. Like I kind of think of puzzles as just like a temporary challenge, like those Buddhist sand paintings. Have you ever seen those? Like the Buddhist monks just spend hours pouring out this sand just to make this beautiful thing that just the wind can blow away. So I'm like, yeah, you finish the puzzle, and then you put it all back in the box and just do it again later. But that's so cool just to like, okay, now you've got the finished piece of art. I love that idea.
I remember taking color theory in college, and I was so busy at the time, but it was very like fun and like challenging how to learn, try to figure out what colors make this color and how to like, because the teacher would try to teach us how to like certain colors represent like, different moods, different tones and things of that nature. Is that how you kind of go about using your colors in general? Like, were you like setting a different tone or a mood with the colors?
Yeah, I definitely do that now. I didn't always, have that kind of comfort or understanding with color, but now I will often think about what am I going to put down as my first color so that it pops through as I'm painting. Like this piece behind me started out as what was originally going to be like an underpainting. I know a lot of times I'll start with a monochromatic painting and then I'll do the normal flesh tones on top. But I ended up just liking this as an underpainting. I just didn't go further into it. I'll think about like, okay, well, if I'm going to be painting brown skin, then I'll put, which is warm, in the red, orange, yellow, warm family, I'll put a cool blue, purple, green family color underneath so that, as you can see with my hand against it, the warmth of that really pops and makes the color pop forward. So I'll a lot of times think about, like it, depending on what I want to be on top, what color I'm going to put underneath. And now I'm getting really into like really bold, bright colors, as you can see from some of the pieces in the background. So I will think about maybe like the mood of a piece and start with the colors, thinking about it that way, rather than just being like, all right, it's a red shirt, I'm going to paint it red. So yeah, I am trying to be more thoughtful about the emotion and energy in the colors I'm choosing, rather than just the logic of like, it's a green leaf, make it green, Yeah.
That's so cool. It makes me think of like, I watch a lot of Drag Race or RuPaul's Drag Race, and like sometimes you'll see them like putting like orange, and I'm like, why orange? Like, but then when you see it and it's with the completed look, it's like, oh, like that's just down it, maybe covering a blemish on their skin that they're trying to like smooth or whatever. It's like like makeup. It's another form of art that.
Oh yeah. Even as a painter, I still consider the Drag Race makeup just pure witchcraft. They're doing that. Like I'm blown away. So I know exactly what you mean.
Oh man. So, we've talked all the time and have not even gotten into this beautiful piece that you've done.
Thank you.
Talk about like the inspiration behind Visitant.
Okay, sure. Maybe is it worth busting it out? Should I put the painting in the background to talk about it?
If you would like, if it's not too much.
All right. I'll take 2 seconds. I gotta move a little around. Unideal painting viewing situation. There we go.
Oh my goodness. Beautiful, beautiful, beautiful. And that's
Thanks
humongous.
so much.
What
So,
size is that?
this is 36 by 48. Maybe it's a little bigger actually. It's definitely bigger than that.
Did you build your own
Stretcher bars? Yeah. So yeah, I take the like for people who aren't familiar with the process, there are just wood bars that you can just fit together, kind of like a picture frame. And then you stretch the canvas fabric over it, prime it, sand it, prime it a couple of times, and then it's good to go. Yeah, it's a pretty big piece. I think this is like I think it's about 4 by 5 feet, something like that. And it took me a couple of months. I made this in 2020 or 2020, I think at the beginning of 2021. Wow. And so this piece was inspired by my time in North Carolina. And so like these are the woods that I got to visit out there. And, you know, it's like heavy talk, but like when I was down there, I know that my, you know, family, before they came to New York, they lived in the Carolinas. And even on the ancestry DNA test, it shows that like that was like a migratory place where the family lived, you know? And so I know that my family, you know, before they were, you know, free citizens of this country were working the lands of the Carolinas. And so it was like a very strange feeling, like walking through these different locations. I don't normally spend that much time down there because I still got a little family down there, but I usually go there for Thanksgiving, you know? I don't really get into a lot of heavy thinking when I'm full of turkey, but spending 7 months down there, you know, walking like these paths and, you know, like they are not subtle in the South. Like they'll have like whole developments called like, you know, Flowers Plantation and Cottonfield Groves. And it's like, you know, it's not like I'm trying to have these heavy thoughts, but they're putting it in my head. Yeah. And like, you know, I couldn't help but think like, am I stepping over the specific lands that my ancestors worked, you know, like, did members of my family walk here before? Am I stepping over their footsteps? You know, like who lived here, who died here? Like, where were they buried? Where would the markers be? You know, if they were buried, you know, in a proper place. And so I kind of got like this feeling of like acknowledgement of them, longing for them, like, and mourning. So this piece is called Visitant, and it's really about like on theme of like, you know, kind of like a ghost. It's like the ghosts of my family members who I never got to meet, never got to know. And so this piece is just like me bringing flowers to them, you know, for like the graves that were never really marked, and for the steps that I don't know where they've stepped at, where they've gone, or what like places, the steps they've taken. But, you know, it's me feeling them around me and wanting to acknowledge their presence through this piece. And so that was where this came from. And like I had very specific emotions with this painting. Not every painting is that specific, but this painting was very specific in that way. And so that's why I'm wearing the flowers and holding the flowers, but have African prints in my gown because, you know, it's all to them. And then, you know, like the Carolinas are kind of like this in between place where we lived, where it's like, we're not from, but now we're from there too. And so it had a lot of meaning. And yeah, but color wise, yeah, I could see how this could be an issue. Like that's definitely that. And like, yeah, I've got purples in the dress, but also the trees are purple too. So yeah. I can see how that can be a challenge.
Yeah, like as I was throwing the puzzle pieces, I was like, oh, this is my very big stack of purple pieces. And then there's more. I have like all these like little sorting trays and like plates. And I'm like, okay, I'll put all the purple pieces here. And then I'm like, I need another piece because
That's so funny. I mean, yeah, I suppose if I were painting this to be a puzzle, I would have a different set of game plans in mind. I'm like, all right, let's block it out. Let's zone it out. We're gonna have some clear areas of color. But as I'm painting, it's like, yeah, we want the green of those leaves to be the same as these and these and these because it's all the same forest. So it's great. Yeah. So you only have like these flowers that are a different green, and then all of these are different. I mean, like maybe I could recognize I think that would also be super weird because I haven't done the puzzle yet myself, but the idea of like revisiting my brush strokes in puzzle form sounds really interesting. Yeah. Because when you're making a painting, you're really taking your time, you're spending a lot of time. Like sometimes things go by quick and you can kind of like brush over it and almost remember like what song you had in the background when you were painting it. And others, like it just goes by really quick. But that would be really interesting. I haven't had the time to really sit down and make my puzzle yet, but I'll tell you about it when I get to it.
Well, I'll tell you that, like that area you're talking about, the flowers, that was the first thing I did. I think the flowers and the dress were the first things I did. And then the skin, like I said, the skin was pretty, I was like, okay, there aren't that many brown pieces. So I was able to like pull them to the side. And I was like, this doesn't go anywhere. I'm like, oh, it must be that part over there, that patch on that side. And so it's definitely, works your brain.
And you mentioned music. This is Vibin with, so you want to like get to know more about your music taste and what kind of music kind of inspires your art and you as an artist. So can you think of any songs that you were listening to while you were doing Visited or you were making it?
I couldn't tell you with all certainty, but I definitely rotate depending on my mood. Like for sure, a good place I'll go is 90s hip hop and R&B. That's always fun. It like feels like it's representative of like how I grew up with Biggie and them growing up in Brooklyn. But I also enjoy some good alternative indie rock, like the Yeah Yeahs and them. And if I'm really in a mood, I might pop on a little classical. Or if it's like kind of rainy, it's always nice to throw on like a little Billie Holiday or like some French jazz and just get really moody about it. It really just like my mood can shift, and then like it just depends on what the painting wants that day. Yeah. Sometimes it could just be like, none of this feels right. I think I need to listen to an audiobook. And I'll do a lot of that too. That'll be like, that does take up a lot more time than the music usually. Cause it's like, if you got 30 hours in the audiobook, then you can just dive in, Yeah. For the audiobooks, it's a lot of fantasy and fiction and sci-fi. So, I'm not embarrassed to say I've listened to the Harry Potter books front and back way more times than was necessary. Definitely could have squeezed in a few other books besides that in that time, but sometimes you just want to be in Hogwarts and that's what it is. But just in general, I really enjoy probably audiobooks more than music because I feel so busy that it's like if I felt like I had time to sit down and really read a book, it should be a time I should be painting or doing something for my career. So I like the multitasking of the audiobooks. It lets me absorb literature. And I feel like I'll find myself thinking in that literary style later, or that will inform, my interests or whatever painting I might be working on could be inspired by it. So, that's definitely a big thing I enjoy absorbing while I'm painting.
Yeah, it's so funny. My husband, I listened to Michelle Obama's book on audio, and I was like, oh yeah, I just finished reading Michelle Obama's book, and he's like, you didn't read, that's odd, she read it to you but you didn't read. I'm like,
she read it to you.
I have the information that was in the book, therefore I read the book. Like, I
don't know how to put it either. I'm like I didn't read, I just listened to this book, and I used to think it was cheating too. I'm like, if your eyes didn't scroll over the words, it's not reading. But no, I feel like it's helping my writing. I can, I'm picking different words. It's still absorbed into my brain, so it still counts. Even if Michelle read it to you, you're lucky that you got a moment with Michelle. Who could say that? Maybe the other millions of people who got the audiobook, but also you.
Exactly. It has been so amazing chatting with you and getting to hear so much about your journey. Could you please tell all of our listeners, where can we find you?
Okay, yeah, absolutely. You can find me on all the internets and the social medias. You can find me on Instagram, Tabitha Whitley Art. You can also find me on TikTok, also Tabitha Whitley Art. You just mix up the underscores, but you'll find me out there. Or if you just Google Tabitha Whitley, you can find my website and just me on all the different things. I, have in-person shows and online shows. I, might have some different things coming up in the near future. So if you follow me, you'll be able to see what I'm up to and keep track of where my work's going.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
Thank you guys. This is a great opportunity. It's been super fun working with you and just going through the whole process. And I really appreciate you guys finding me and reaching out and, being interested in my work. So thank you.
Thank you for joining us for an episode of Vibing With. Be sure to purchase a puzzle by this talented artist at puzzlesofcolor.com. You can also listen to a curated playlist of music to pair with this artist's puzzle on Spotify. Just search for Puzzles of Color.